doing quite a few deals. But yeah, if you're newer in the business and you're wondering what Ryan has done to sell so many homes, call for 1 to 2 hours a day at a minimum. Database, expireds, for sale by owners. Ryan's really good, especially with expireds, and it's all about how many times you have to call an expired before an appointment's set on average.
5 to 8 times.
So if you're like, hey, I've called expireds, Eric, and it didn't work. Like if you called them one time and you called 100 of them one time, it doesn't work. You need to call 10 of them 10 times and you'll get 2 or 3 of them. So
how long do you usually wait between times that you phone? Like,
I'll let you answer that, Ryan.
I'm on the conversation and how far I get. I want to capture motivation with it on with the time frame is. If I don't get that, I'll call until I get it.
okay,
Every 30 days.
okay.
Yeah, it really just depends on each person. Some people, if you hear that they just broke their leg and they're up in their house for 2 months, then I'm not calling them tomorrow. But if another person's like, hey, I've got a job transfer and I need to be out in a week, then yeah, I'm following up the next day. All right, well, we have a lot to go over, so let's go ahead and get started in this. Everybody has a blank offer. Is that correct? By the way, I have to say we have a lot of agents here that do a lot of business, who write a lot of purchase agreements, and for some reason you are here writing purchase agreements, and thank you for sharpening your skills. We should be coming back to these sessions, not just going, oh, I got it, I'm not going to learn anything. So yeah, thank you very much, and I'm happy our office is doing that. So let's go ahead and bring up our offer. The first thing that I want to bring your attention to, you go to the bottom of our offers. We just switched contracts. This is actually, who remembers actually when we brought this contract out? I would say it was like 3rd quarter, 4th quarter last year. Even though it says May on here, we brought that out a little bit later in the year. And make sure you're using this revised contract on all of your new agreements. Some of you may have them saved on your computer, the old agreements or something like that. Make sure you're using this new updated one. If you need me to stop, please say, Eric, I don't understand what you said. I need more clarification, whatever that is. Don't think that this is just me talking at you today. Feel free to answer questions. I'll probably be asking you some questions too to make it interactive. If I'm asking a question, it's because I want you to learn and not just copy. A lot of people look at our purchase agreement videos and they literally just copy them. Like that's not going to help educate yourself. If you're watching them, think if you had, I always say, if you had the most critical friend or family member across the table from you that you had to present an offer to, you should be like afraid to fill out this agreement at that level, because when you take it that seriously, when you're filling these in and explaining it to them, you're going to have no trouble when it comes to real life explanations of these offers. So let's go ahead and dive in. We have 2 different things. The first part is going to be pretty slow, and we're spending the majority of the time on the first page. And then we added an extra half hour to go over advanced forms. Now we only are doing advanced forms that we are seeing currently being used in today's market. So yeah, we will be going over what those look like and how to use those to your advantage. Those 2 items, does anybody remember what that was from the email? Those 2 additional forms? Escalation clause. Yeah, seller occupancy post transfer is what it's called. So yeah, let's go ahead and start with the purchase agreement here.
That's what I have right now.
Perfect. That'll help, right? All right, very good. Real quick, line 1, go ahead and write these notes in, however many you need to. I have agents who come back to me with this years after and say, I still use this like handwritten note. That's what we want this to be today. So when you go back, you're all set to go.
I still have my first one from 6 years ago that I use on every single time, just as reference.
Doesn't surprise me. And what does surprise me is it was 6 years ago. I feel like I wasn't even a productivity coach 6 years ago, but time does fly. Yep. I was, but yeah, it's crazy that time's flying like that. All right, so we have a shared screen for Zoom, so we are good to go. So buyer, I know this seems very simple. We write in a name. What do you think mistakes are made on that line?
The complete name?
Complete name. We're writing in. We always know that my friend is Bill. What is his real name? William. Does he also want a middle initial? He may want a middle initial. So when we are presenting these offers, make sure you're asking them these questions. So type in there, ask buyer full name. Also, do we want, is his girlfriend, is his wife, is his family members, is he buying this as a partnership? Is he buying it under an LLC? We need to be typing this in. One common question I get is, Eric, if it's an LLC, how do we write this? Very simply, an LLC goes into the LLC name. So KZip Homes LLC would be then signing by the actual name of the person, but the LLC name goes in this line only. You don't type in anybody's name in that line. But when they sign, they do sign their name, their full name. It would be Eric Uchbar if it's my LLC, and I would write down member LLC. Something else that is very important about purchase agreements. Allison, you were in the business when we did not have dot loop, right? And when we would give a purchase agreement in paper, would clients be more likely to read them over if they were in front of them in paper and they were signing it?
Yes, absolutely.
Today, we have dot loop, which sounds great that people will sign anything we put in front of them. What is the problem with that? They don't read it.
Read it with the sign here.
It just so easy to just click sign, sign, sign. I will not allow our clients to sign these without reviewing them. I don't care if they're an investor, an attorney, I don't care who it is. I want them to know that there's a home warranty on their offer that they got, because if not, they're going to go to the closing table and go, you never told me. And we can't just say, well, you signed it. We need clarification. So be careful and don't just say, this is again, I'm going through the purchase agreement, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer. We probably will have, I don't say mistakes, I say corrections. We will probably have some corrections when we're done with this. I may have forgotten the middle initial, and that's fine. It's easy to correct now. It's not easy to correct on the closing date. So make sure you are prepping this. It takes about 5 to 10 minutes to go over it with them, over the main points, but be very careful when a seller just goes, just tell me what the purchase price is and I'll be happy to go. All right, so offers to buy the following property described at, located at blank address. So fill in the address, pretty simple there. Double check it. Most importantly though, is it the address that's important or the parcel number? We can have all sorts of different addresses because we might spell out court. We might just put in CT. We might actually have the road sign can say court where the parcel number actually says road. I've had odd examples like that. What matters though is the parcel number. The parcel number I refer to as the social security number for the piece of property. That's the one that cannot change and it must be right. The other thing that, go ahead, Serena.
Sorry.
No, don't apologize.
I wanted to point out something that you had told us years ago in one of these contract classes. You said, always check the auditor's website, make sure that all of the parcel numbers are included on here. And right after that, I went on vacation. I had someone else prep the offer for me. I double checked because you said there were 5 parcels. You can only put 1 on.
Yeah.
So my person would not have, my client would not have even had the parcel that her house was actually on. So fortunately, because of what you told us, it saved huge trouble.
I appreciate you saying that and bringing that up. And that's exactly it. Go on the auditor site. Every auditor is different. Go to the GIS system and click the neighboring parcels. I had one, the story that I was probably giving on that one was I had a property that the main house, it was a bank owned property. The bank just looked up the address. The agent typed in 1 parcel and I realized the septic system was on the neighboring parcel. How would you like to have a house that you can't put a septic on because it's on the neighboring parcel? That could be an issue. Real easy to fix now. If you know my coaching style, I'm normally the person that just says, give it a shot and go. Fire before you aim. This is the exact opposite when it comes to purchase agreements. This is where you can make massive, massive mistakes. I'm okay with you calling expireds and kind of learning it the hard way and jumping in very quickly. I am not okay with you just kind of going, I kind of get this purchase agreement thing. Let's see what I can do with it. This is where you get into lawsuits. We need to slow down and take our time with this. Take an extra 5 minutes, think it over. And if you get a counter offer, look it over, make sure nothing's been changed that you don't want. So slow down on those items. So yeah, double check the parcels neighboring it and use your eyes, like take a look at the GIS and go, yeah, it looks like the neighboring parcel, the fence goes around that neighboring parcel too. Check the name on that, see if that is something that should have been included. I've also had it where parcel numbers on condos have actually been the wrong parcel. I got a client this way because he bought a condo, fixed it all up with another agent. 3 years later, somebody knocked on his door and said, I need the keys to my condo. And he's like, what are you talking about? I own this. Nope, you don't own it. You bought the one 3 doors down that somebody put the lockbox on and marketed wrong. And it was a beat up unit that was in horrible condition. Slow down, take your time, just click that parcel and go, yeah, that's about the 5th condo in. That seems right, not the 2nd. So take your time on that. Another item that's commonly missed. Remember, when we receive offers as seller on a listing, what do you think our sellers are most excited about on the contract? One line, they say, read to me line 23, Eric. That's all I care about. There's a lot more to an offer than that. There's usually about 15 to 20 items that we have to discuss on the offer that are essential items. So we can't skip over items. A commonly skipped over item is lines 4 through 12. I always ask the seller, and the buyer, this is your one and only shot to figure out what you want on the property. So take your time, fill that out. I cannot stand it when agents put in line 12, also included, all appliances currently in home. Why is that a problem?
Specify. They can take away one.
They can take, right, they could be literally like signing it right as they're moving these items out. And now it's, yeah, there's no appliances in the house. See you later. How long does it take to go through the photos and go, yep, there is a washer, there is a dryer? Are you allowed to add extra appliances in there if they're not advertised on the MLS? As long as they are currently in the home, absolutely. Now, if your client wants, let's say it's a vacant home and there are no appliances, can your client just check they want a range and oven and a microwave and a refrigerator? They cannot, because it says on here, only the items that are currently in the property can be checked. So it doesn't matter what's in the MLS, but if you are doing something like that and you're asking for additional items, you have to write another sentence, seller to provide, range, oven, whatever that might be. I had an attorney, my biggest one was I had an attorney that I trust, not only did I trust, they know contracts better than we do. They do not know the real workings of real estate, but I just said, he's an attorney, I'll send the contract, I'm selling it for him, he'll know what to do. Well, somebody checked off AC. There was no AC in the house. The seller then the buyer at closing said, well, where's my air conditioning? And I said, we don't have air conditioning, we never did. Why would we add that? And they said, well, it got checked off and I want it added. And well, that's not how you add air conditioning, number one. So it was a fault on that agent for sneaking it into the contract. And it was a fault on our side, myself and that attorney, to just go, yeah, like it's only the things that are included, because the buyer was refusing to sign at the end of the day. If that happens, we have to somehow come to a conclusion. The other agent said too, this is the 4th time they've done this, and they've gone to court 3 times. You would think after your first time of having a problem, you would stop writing contracts like this. And I'm guessing she was probably overinflating her numbers and telling me things that we're trying to just get the air conditioner installed. But again, it's still a problem when these issues come up. So don't sneak things into contracts. And if you see a problem, make sure you're bringing it up.
Eric, would
Yeah.
you prefer that to be noted on line 12, also included, or on a separate agenda?
I'm okay with it being also included. I would actually cross off also included, and then I would write in that line, sellers provide buyer with blank, blank, blank. When we are doing that, I want you to write this in on also included. Who is responsible for it? When does it have to be there? Who is paying for it? You can even write in there, be specific. I can write in there, seller to provide a range. Seller can put a range in there. That doesn't mean that it's a working range. He can put a gas range in and it's electric service going to it. It's not going to work and it's not going to be helpful. if at all possible, we want to make the burden on the buyer and have the seller pay for it. The reason why is we don't want bickering over the appliance was white and they really wanted it matching stainless with the dishwasher. So if those items come up, we want to be very specific. Things that you cannot put in here is chattel unless it's a cash deal. Many of us remember what chattel is. That's personal property. Sometimes banks will let you get away with the bar stools at the matching bar stools at the kitchen breakfast bar or something like that. We don't want to get into couches or outdoor furniture or anything like that. That's going to have to be a separate addendum. I use the garage sale method with that. I just say, you two are going to talk offline. You will put together an agreement that you'll buy the furniture for X amount of dollars. There is something though that states that they will not be putting together a transaction for, if it's something significant, let's say they want to buy the Corvette in the garage. We can't say we're going to sell the Corvette for $1. Only if they buy the house. They're signing an addendum with their bank stating that there are no outside dealings that are referenced to this deal. Any questions on that? Keep it clean, keep it simple, and move on. Remember too, if we're writing more than 2 sentences, we are technically practicing law. So we can't do that. Don't get into, well, if this happens, then that happens. That might contradict another part of our contract. So make it very simple.
Eric?
Yeah.
So if it's say an investor property and it's not listed at this time,
Mhm.
and he's gonna do it for sale by owner, and he's got like A, B, C, D, E, F, G that he needs to do
Mhm.
before title transfers, like finish the electric, finish the plumbing, put in a driveway. Do we just list that all just like we would here, but on a separate addendum?
Yeah, that gets really, really tough because finish electric can mean 1,000 different things, right?
Functioning electric.
What I would love to have is an estimate from a contractor and this to be completed by such and such date. For instance, with electric, do we also need permitting? Often we do. We want to write that in there, make sure permits are pulled by a licensed electrician and completed by such and such date. Remember, you have possession dates and walkthrough dates. Don't wait till closing date to get these things done, because if the inspector is coming through on May 5th and you're closing May 6th, well, that inspector is probably not going to finish up that inspection and have it rewritten and closed out as a permit until May 8th. So just think of these things ahead of time. I always like to give a week buffer ahead of closing. So if we're closing on the 7th, on the 1st, I want everything done and completed. And if there is a problem with that inspection and somebody left the screw loose, that gives time for the inspector to come back and fix that and move
You're
on.
talking about it's not a general home inspector.
It could be any inspector, could be any, I mean, even a walkthrough. I wouldn't call it an inspection, but we want to make sure that when the buyer walks through that these items are done. I don't want to go back after closing and find that out.
So you mentioned that in ROC or in any other form?
Anything that you're writing in, if it's in the ROC, if it's an additional item to be included, an additional item to be excluded, whatever that might be, we want to make sure that we are being specific on who is responsible, when it has to be done by, and who is paying for it.
From these 3 points, that who's responsible, when it has to be done and who's paying, we can also write it and also include it.
Yeah, anything that we're being specific on. Again, we don't want to get too crazy. Like I wouldn't, to Serena's point of the electric all to be done. I wouldn't want Serena writing in like 3 220 volt 30 amp outlets going into the garage and things like that, right? But we do want to have an attached estimate and say these things have to be done by such and such time. Try and stay away from any of that if at all possible. But yeah, sometimes we have to get creative. But again, don't be practicing law with more than 1 or 2 sentences here. Items not included. I always use Serena's example that she had a hot tub that got rushed to a close. It got closed early. And she wrote in, as we told her, hot tub is excluded. Well, the seller took that as, well, yeah, it's not included in the sale, but I don't have to take it. So he left it there for Serena to deal with. Closed on the property, transferred. We then had, let's see, the chain of events that came from this. We then had the hot tub that had to be removed. So Serena sent over her remover to remove the hot tub because she's a good agent and took care of it when the other agent or seller wouldn't. Well, the person came over and said, well, there's plumbing that's here. We can't do it until the plumbing's disconnected. Plumber went there and he goes, well, that's done. But he goes, somebody needs to disconnect the electric. The electrician went there and the electrician said, I can't do it because there's a bee's nest in the electric box. So Serena's doing all of this stuff. Right. And
Seller to hot tub and.
Yeah.
She rushed to get in there.
to close it.
My fault was when we didn't do the final walkthrough, because I was so focused on trying to get her in there. I forgot.
It's so easy that we hit the panic button when a seller's like, I need to move, and they're rushing closing dates ahead of time, or worried about appraisals coming back and all this other stuff. And we might go, fine, and for all we know, we could be out of town when that stuff happens. So be aware when we don't do walkthroughs, we expose ourselves to that. But also think when we are saying remove a hot tub or remove a oil bin in the backyard or tires or whatever that might be, talk to our clients and see what specifically they need to do. And then think, once that's removed, is there a hole in the deck? Is there electric that's going to be behind there? So try and write all of that in as much as possible. The other fault on, I appreciate you always owning your responsibilities, and that other seller should have realized, hey, I need to get this thing out of here. If you're, I bet he did. That seller should have also, or that other agent should have also been on top of that seller saying, hey, where are we at? It's a quick 5-minute phone call. An ounce of prevention is a pound of cure, right? How long does it take you to send an email 2 weeks before title transfer? How long does it take you, Serena, to go through that, right? Days and days and days. I'm sure your buyer really appreciated you owning the responsibility. But again, a quick email ahead of time can be a big help. These are items that can go in your magic 6, which are the 6 items you do immediately upon transfer. That can be like a 7th note. And just every day, quick email, where's that hot tub? Send me a photo, listing agent or buyer.
Your magic 6 has been amazing too, and really helping make sure to get through everything you know.
Yeah, you'll hear me referencing that. That's the 6 items you do immediately upon transfer. And that usually sorts out immediately upon going under contract, that usually sorts out 90% of the problems in a transaction. If you follow that on a daily basis and just do quick email follow-ups, you have a track record in your email that, hey, everything's moving along smoothly.
I went a step further when I created mine and went all the way up to handing them the keys.
Yeah.
So that I get every single point.
Yeah, forwarding your mail, getting garage door remotes. How many times those things get lost, ready to transfer? They're in Florida with the buyer's new car or whatever it could be, or seller's new car, whatever it could be. Anyways, let's move on to secondary offers. This is a good way to get a house under contract today. If you're unaware, the buyers are having a difficulty getting houses under contract and you have a multiple offer situation. When do you not have a multiple offer situation? The moment it goes under contract and homes come back to market. So if you can negotiate a house that is currently in a pending status as a secondary offer, what you can do is negotiate it. And the moment that first deal falls apart, it goes to your buyer. The big item that you have to be aware of, 2 points on this, is number 1, make sure you check that this is or is not a secondary offer. If by chance you accidentally write in, it is not a secondary offer, and you thought you were presenting a secondary offer, all of a sudden you have 2 buyers that are buying the same house. So double check that line that it says is a secondary offer. The other one is the honor before date here. That means your offer is valid and your buyer will buy that house up until this date. Now, they do have the right, if they rescind the offer, which all you have to do is email the other agent and say, hey, we're under contract as a secondary, but my buyer found a different home. All we have to do is email that agent and say, we're rescinding that offer. We're moving on to the next house. It does give you that right to do that the way this is written in here. Now, if by chance you don't send that email and your buyer offers on another house, that first house that they offered on, the other deal fell apart, your buyer just bought 2 homes. Read this paragraph a couple of times before sending it. It will make a lot of sense to you. But again, just be aware, make sure you are rescinding an offer before acceptance. And once it's accepted, you can't just rescind it now. It's now a valid contract the moment they tell you that a mutual release has been signed on the primary contract.
You need a response on that email for it to be binding with this. that you
Nope.
sent it.
just needs to be delivered. Just double check your email, make sure you're sending it to Gmail, not Kmail or something like that. So, very good. All right, price. Sounds very easy. What do you think the big mistakes people make on price are?
Honest money and down payment.
Earnest money and down payment. How many of us in the real estate industry who've been in it for a while have accidentally told a buyer 300,000 when we meant 400,000 or 425 and 525? It happens, right? Slow down. We had an offer in our office between two agents and somebody said, it's a $500,000 house. I don't know if this deal is going to come together. This was 5 years ago and the market was not doing what it was. I don't think we're going to be able to get this together. It's going to be rough, but let's try and get this transaction done. Sent it over to the other agent. It was a $500,000 house. Sent over an offer for $500,000. The other agent's like, this is a dream. Like, it's a full price offer. It's been on the market for months. Sign the thing and send it back. We're all kind of like, wait a second, something doesn't sound right. We should have called that other agent and said, what do you mean this is a difficult offer? It seems pretty easy. He meant to write in 400,000. The buyer signed it because he did not review the offer with him. Typed in 500,000. The seller now thinks that they have a deal at 500,000. House is on the market for months. That's a rare thing to happen after a house has been like that. Do you think that buyer ended up buying that home?
No.
Absolutely not. Do you think that there were some hard feelings over that?
Yeah.
There were multiple faults there, right? But that agent thought they could sneak it in, and when they smelled something wrong, oh, it looks good for my client. No, it's not good for your client because it's probably not going to close. So don't sneak things into contracts. Just talk it over. If you see a problem, you smell something funny, bring it out. The other thing that we do often on our counter offers, anything that I change on a contract, when I send back a counter offer, I highlight an initial, right? I might be able to sneak in that the earnest money is 0 now, because now they're looking at the purchase price. I highlight it so that it's not something a problem down the road. Do a favor to your other agent, work along with them, don't work against them. So yeah, that's the biggest challenge we see on price. Slow down, double check with the buyer, and you could have multiple different people talking about different prices. They may have forgotten what that last price was. Anyways, earnest money, pretty simple. 1% minimum 1,000 is what we want to write in there. The higher the earnest money, the more likely you'll get the offer accepted. The higher the earnest money, also more likely for a lawsuit if the deal falls apart. So be aware of that. Yet, this is a great way if you have a comfortable and confident, experienced buyer only. Comfortable, confident, experienced buyer for them to be writing high earnest money amounts. If I have a deal, I just bought a house last week, I would have been happy to put in $65,000 for earnest money if that meant I got the deal. But I was buying that house. I don't care what the deal was. I am buying it. I don't care if the tornado blows it over tomorrow. I'm buying that property. I'm giving a crazy example, obviously, but you get my point. Those are the only 8 times that you're going, I will put high earnest monies. If not, again, stay around that 1% and explain the risks to the buyer. What's the buyer always ask about earnest money? Do we get it back? And the answer is, traditionally in real estate, Northeast Ohio, 9 times out of 10, the buyer gets all of the money back, probably even higher than that, if they do their inspections and follow their contingencies to the T. The faster you can get your home inspection done, the less likely the seller is going to try and get the money. Why?
Not a lot of wasted time. Right.
They don't want a ton of wasted time. They don't want to be 3 weeks down the road and then your buyer's like, you know what, that problem with the home inspection, I'm still getting an estimate and I don't like it. We want to get this stuff done immediately. I put a house under contract last week on Friday. Sunday was a home inspection. We were back on the market Monday. Did we even have to take the house off the market? No. On the listing side and the buyer side, I'm rushing home inspectors, and they usually are pretty available right now because a lot of people are buying without home inspections. So anyways, check to be made payable in escrow. So you can either make a check payable within 4 days, or you can have a note redeemed within 4 days. You can attach a promissory note, which is pretty much a legal IOU. I typically just do a check made payable to an escrow agent, and I tell my buyers right here, this is an education moment. The moment we go under contract, we're putting the earnest money with the title company. We're not playing games that day 2, we're doing your home inspection. And if we don't feel like handing in the earnest money, we don't want to, we don't have to. Your buyer has to submit the earnest money, and it's likely they'll get it back if they put that money out, but don't play the game that I don't know if I want the house anymore after the home inspection and let me think about it. Big red flag if you tell your buyer or another agent tells you that they're going to collect the earnest money at the home inspection. What's the buyer want to do with the home inspection?
Price change.
They may be looking for a price change. Yeah, they might say, yeah, there's a problem with the house. There's something going on. And as soon as there's a problem with the house, good luck trying to get that check from them. Get the check sent in, and then you can get it returned according to the way the agreement's written. Is it a risk for the buyer to hand in earnest money? Yes, it is part of buying real estate. They're going to have to sacrifice something. My brother just bought a house in South Carolina, and in South Carolina, the rules are completely different. They have due diligence money and they have earnest money. Due diligence is gone. I don't care what you do. That's money spent to take the house off the market. And I don't disagree with that. Here in Northeast Ohio, like I have no recourse on a buyer anymore. Like it's like, yeah, earnest, you have every way that you possibly can get out of this deal. And that's just the way it's done up in Northeast Ohio. Cash down payment. Talk to your buyer about the cash down payment. Big mistake we see here. Buyer is buying FHA 3.5% down, $100,000 house. How much money do they think they need in their bank account? $3,500. What are they forgetting about? They need closing costs on top of it. Should we be telling them and advising how much closing costs they should have? We should have them talk to the lender and have the lender tell us how much they need. Either they're going to be putting it down out of their own pocket, or they can request a seller to pay, which is why I love this new contract, and it's automatically in there in line 35. We never had this. We'd always put in also included. All you have to do is type in the amount of money they want. Red flag with that, lender tells you 6%. That's a problem. Usually your buyers don't need 6%. That is the maximum they can have. The problem that agents have is they'll write in 6%. Now their $100,000 offer looks like what, Ryan? 94, right? At $94,000, and all of a sudden they only need $3,000 in closing costs. Now they just wasted $3,000 of that buyer's money because that money goes to the seller. Any questions on that?
Line 32 for the cash down payment, are you adding in the closing costs to that number? So if they're putting, say, 15,000 down, and then they have 7,000 closing costs, I always just put the 15.
Correct. That's only down payment. Now, that's if the buyer is paying the closing costs on their own. That's none of the business of the seller, none of the business on the contract. That's between them and the lender. Now, if they are asking for seller paid concessions, that's where they put on line 35. So in that example, 15 grand on line 32, the buyer pays 35, the seller pays 7,000. The problem with per lender, real world, it would probably be fine. The problem with that is your finance contingency technically doesn't protect your buyer. And the reason why is, could that per lender, could he give you a loan if you did 100% down payment? Could you still close on the loan if you did 100% down payment? You technically could. I'm going to make the argument. Think about this. So you buy it for 100,000 and you say per lender, and the lender goes, well, you can close on the loan. I'm telling you, you have to come up with your entire down payment as the purchase price or some ridiculously high number. Then per lender, your finance contingency doesn't kick in. Real world, just like that air conditioning problem that we talked about, or the 400 and 500,000, buyer's not buying the house. I don't care if they have 100 grand in the bank or not, but I want to protect that area. This also comes into play when we have minimum down payment buyers, or I'm sorry, higher down payment buyers. Let's say I put in here 30% down on a $100,000 house. My buyer, let's say you use a better example, 20% down. What's the big number at 20% versus 19%? We have no PMI after 20%, right? So if we put 20% down, we're good to go. We buy a house for 100 grand. 20% down is 20 grand down. Our loan amount is how much? 80,000. Appraisal comes in at 95. Now, all of a sudden, the buyer is like, well, wait a second, my payment's going way up because now I have PMI if I take that 20% and add it in. So if you have anything above the minimum standard for that loan, you should be writing in contingent upon house appraising for purchase price if your buyer is going to do that. I don't like doing that in today's market because why? It's unlikely in today's market you're going to get the house. We have appraisal gaps, which are the exact opposite of what I just said, where the buyer is saying, I just had somebody write in an offer on a $500,000 house, no appraisal gap, no infinite appraisal gap, pretty much. They said, we don't care what the appraisal comes in at, we're buying the house.
But do we need to mention about the appraisal? Does the lender, the contingency, the financing contingency, that doesn't protect the buyer?
Only at the minimum percentage down. So if I do 3.5% down and the house doesn't appraise for 100,000, the deal on this contract, even if I've got 100 grand in the bank, I'm protected because I have 3.5% down. Now, let's say I go, you know what, show them that I can do 20% down. I can still get that loan. And the lender is going to say, yeah, you're going to do $15,000 down and we'll give you a PMI payment. And then your 5 grand is going to cover your appraisal gap. But my buyer did not get the same deal that they wrote on the contract because now they have PMI.
So we should mention about the appraisal.
If you have above the minimum standard, yeah. And that's if your buyer is willing to weaken their offer by writing that in, because if you have an appraisal contingency in there, that's an issue. I know we bounced around a lot on that. Does anybody have any questions?
Are there any ramifications of writing in? So say you have a 20% down buyer.
Mm-hmm.
And you have $3,000 earnest money, 20% down.
Mm-hmm.
And then the house goes into multiple. So instead of 100, now they're paying 120. Now they don't have that 20%.
Mm-hmm.
So but you got 20% on a contract. And then when they go to do the loan app, they realize what they have in their
Whoops.
savings is not 20%. Does that need to be corrected?
Yes. That's why I always recommend, a lot of people like to write 20%, and I don't have a problem with percentage, but in that scenario, we may forget to update that later on. And that buyer again might go, what she's saying is we have $100,000 house, we have 20 grand in our bank account, we're good to go. We escalate the contract over the next week on multiple offers to 120. Well, now I need 22,000. 24,000. Thank you. 24,000. I'm short $4,000. I would not have done that unless I would have had just the 20%, because now I still have 20 grand. Even if I forget it, my down payment says I have to have 20 grand down. But yeah, while these things are changing, we have to be thinking logically. We have to be thinking, where does this land? So yeah, I like to stay away from the percentages. Thank you for bringing that up. I put in dollar amounts on everything. That way the buyer understands specifically what we're getting into. By the way, I've seen it written both ways. The way I like to see it is $100,000 on a purchase price, $1,000 in earnest money, $20,000 in cash down payment, and $80,000 as a loan balance. I do not subtract the earnest money from the down payment. You can write it either way. Our old contracts used to actually say including earnest money or excluding earnest money. What I like to do is I actually write in however I'm doing it. So if I'm including earnest money in there, I would say 20 grand, including earnest money, because technically earnest money is part of your down payment.
So we don't write 19 in the cash down and 1,000. I mean,
If that's the case, I would literally write in plus earnest money. If I'm doing 19,000 in that example, I would literally, I would put 19,000 and I would not handwrite, but I would type in plus earnest money. Or I would write 20,000, including earnest money.
Yeah, I would always subtract earnest money from the down payment.
Yeah. Either one is fine. Our old contract used to read that way. And now it just says cash down payment to be deposited in escrow. Very good. If you are writing cash, line 33 is 0. Your remaining balance is 32. Make sure you check off conventional FHA, and possibly you're doing both. You could do conventional or FHA. People ask, does it matter, Eric? Like the seller wants to just get the cash at the end of the day. Yes, that's true as long as it closes, but there are different inspections and other problems that can come up. If your buyer wants to change afterwards, a seller may refuse it.
What did you say about 50 cash deal on line 32, 0, and then
33 would be 0.
33 would be 0.
And then 32 is just all the money you're putting into escrow.
Okay,
So
that's
it's
right.
more just like a large down payment.
That's it.
So this is a different question. You were telling me something about VA when somebody, a buyer comes by and either VA that is seller has to pay the closing costs, which is like about $6,000.
They don't have to pay the closing costs. There are additional fees in in VA loans. I believe they have to pay the entire title insurance amount. The other thing is they have to pay for the pest inspection. I always tell my sellers it's about $500 to $800 that they should be budgeting. So if I've got a conventional offer and a VA offer, the VA offer, even at the same price, is netting me $800 less, I'm going to say. Somewhere in that number. You could ask a title company to give you that number exactly on each deal, depending on purchase price and all of that. But yeah, there are additional fees. Thank you for bringing that up. To the seller, there are additional fees. Also, another item, VA is a what down payment? Anybody know? 0 down payment. Does that mean that they come out of pocket at 0 at title transfer? They still have to pay their closing costs unless we write in line 35, $6,000, $5,000. Again, stay away from those percentages. I also had somebody years ago that wrote in seller to pay all closing costs. On a $200,000 house, they tried to get 12 grand in closing costs. That was ridiculous. I've never seen such a high amount. That is not what the seller was expecting. This is why you need to be specific and write down how much your client will be willing to do. It's kind of messy at that moment because you're like, I'm right here. I just need to write something in so we can put this thing under contract. Trust me, take an extra couple moments, call the lenders, call whoever you need to. If you have to wait overnight, figure it out. 37 and 39. Loan within blank days, write in a loan application. Well, don't overthink this. Every buyer knows what loan application is. When we are a licensed realtor, though, we second guess this on our first couple of contracts. We're going loan application. I'm confused. I'm concerned. All that is the buyer going into their lender and applying for their loan. Loan commitment is going to be when the lender has checked, they've done the 4506T form for the IRS. They're waiting on those documents back. The appraisal is being ordered. They're checking on verification of employment. All of those items, once they get that back, they will close. That's about 30 days from acceptance. You can ask the lender, though. Certain lenders can move that in 15 days. Would that be a helpful thing for your buyer while negotiating in multiple offers if you can write that date in for 15 days instead of 30? That's a way you can make your offer look stronger without upping the purchase price. That is our job.
We write in 30 days or an actual date.
Thank you. We write in an actual date.
Oh.
I wish we would not use this word closing on line 48. That's the next page. I still to this day don't know what closing means when a seller tells me this. So it's really important when we're talking to our clients. Savvy?
On line 37, you said we need to mention the date or the 30 days?
So that would be within 3 days,
Oh, okay.
5 days. By the way, if you're writing in 3 days and it's the day before Christmas Eve, your client's not going to get that done. So think about the days coming up when we're going under contract. It might take you 2 to 3 days to put this under contract. So re-reference and just think, can I get this done within 3 or 5 days? I don't like it when agents write in 10. There's no reason your buyer needs 10 days to apply for a loan. I try and get my loan applications done the day we go under contract. I'm sending off the offer to the lender and we're rocking and rolling. All right, closing. Don't use this term with your seller because they will be very confused. When we are referencing different people with a transaction too, don't just say, he said it's going to be $5,000. I don't know if that means that you were talking to the lender, title company, the escrow agent, the city inspector. Say the city inspector, the title company, the lender, because your clients, you may tell them something and they misinterpret what you're saying. This is often the case here. That first one is going to be what we call our funds and docs. Notice it says all funds and docs. That first date is our funds and docs date. That means all funds have to be in place and title transfer, and all documents have to be signed. That's going to be line 49. You can write in there TT -2. Who knows what that stands for? Title transfer -2. Why do we want all the funds in place and the docs signed 2 days prior to title transfer? because the title company has to gather all this information from all these different sources, and then they disperse to the county and they disperse these checks. We don't want at 4 o'clock, the day of title transfer, when moving trucks are in the driveway, that your buyer is signing the final docs and they have to rush it out to the county within 10 minutes to try and get it there so it files by 4:30. Give yourself a couple of days so you're not rushing like that. This is a good notice that you should have in your Magic 6, that like maybe a week before title transfer, you're trying to make sure that signing is happening. Why is this such a difficult item? Because we were waiting on the lender typically at that time for their final docs, and the title company won't schedule anyone until they have the documents. And I don't blame them, because they're going to be wasting time setting up closing dates with, or I'm sorry, now I'm doing it. They're setting up signing dates, funds and docs dates with our clients, and they don't have the proper documentation they need.
So this is the actual signing date.
Correct. Big thing that you should be telling your clients, congratulations, but you're not getting keys. That is not the day you get keys. You can sign 3 weeks ahead of time on a cash deal if you need. You will get keys on the possession date, but we'll talk about that in a moment. Your line 50 is what we call our title transfer date. So this is when the title actually goes, the deed goes to the recorder's office and it gets officially recorded on that date. That's line 50. Line 53 is, and I'm sorry, that's TT date. That's the date that we're transferring. Normally, this is about 30 to 45 days on a standard deal. 30 to 45 days. We write in an actual date. Big mistake a lot of people make is they put this date as a weekend or a holiday. You are not going to have those dates happen. So check your dates. Make sure it's a Monday through Friday. Stay away from Fridays. Why?
If it goes wrong, you get a whole weekend of unhappiness.
Yes, and you better believe we've got moving trucks lined up in the driveway, utilities that are now being canceled, all sorts of stuff for a whole weekend. Line them up for a Thursday or a Wednesday. It will make your life a lot easier. 53, that's our possession. That's when we officially give keys. And notice it says on here, on or before 5 p.m. So if your clients are really excited and they want to get in at 4 p.m., are they allowed to? Only if it transfers title and you get the notification from the title company. Walkthrough. I love this about the new contract. We used to have a whole separate addendum. A walkthrough is just your right to walk through the house. Read this paragraph and read it to your buyers and sellers multiple times. Sellers are always in chaos mode during the walkthrough. Why?
Because they are moving house.
Their house is a disaster and they're going, I need to clean it. I need to clean it. So when you're signing this contract, I tell them, I'm going to give you a call. You're probably going to forget I'm going to tell you this. And they laugh. And I say, a week before title transfer, when your boxes are all over the place and you find all this dust under your couch and it's chaos, the buyer is going to have to come through and knock on your door and walk through the house with their agent. It's completely fine that your house is a disaster. They're going to feel that way. It's normally not. It's the sellers that have those high SC personalities who are like, I need to make it perfect. It doesn't have to be perfect. Your buyers need to know this is not a time to bring up old business. This is not a time to go during the home inspection. They said that, you know, this wall has dampness on the wall, and your buyer goes, that's fine. We knew it was an older home, and they see it's damp then. Sorry, you should have talked about that during the home inspection. This is a time for you walk in the house and there's 3 feet of water in the basement and there wasn't 3 feet of water in the basement last time. That's a different story. A tree fell down on the power lines and ripped the power lines off the house and nobody's been there. To make sure a hot tub was removed. Bring your ROCs, bring any repair requests. Check all of those items. Let's go back to page 1 real quick and just put a quick note on also included. Remember point of sale. Figure out who is handling point of sale and use that same exact example. Who is responsible? When is it done by and all of that? Who should we be asking about the point of sale if we're a buyer agent? The city. We want to ask the city directly because there are so many steps to point of sales. It confuses me half the time with certain cities. And if I ask the other agent or I ask the seller, they may go, I did the point of sale. Well, I registered for the point of sale. It doesn't mean that it's completed. So always, always, always ask the city, what is happening here? Who is responsible for these items? What are the next steps? Who has to come in the house? Who has to come out of the house? So make sure you have a quick note on there. If the city has a point of sale, you should be checking this now. If it's your listing, we should have been doing this day one of the conversation with the seller. Also included.
If they have a point of sale inspection that's completed with a date
Mhm.
already uploaded in MLS, is it okay to just rely on that or still go to the city?
If it's a compliant date that it says the point of sale is the property's violation free and we're good to close, I'm good with that. As long as it's a valid date, watch those dates. If it's a violation list, I want to write in here who's taking care of these violations. And who else do you need to check on with this is your lender. Your lender may say that these items have to be repaired beforehand, or we have to put money in escrow, whatever it might be. All right. For the sake of moving quickly through this and hitting the top points here, we're going to rush through the last bit so we can get time to these additional items here. Title is pretty standard. You're going to be checking off whichever title company that we have to update this form, by the way, for the new title company. But yeah, you're going to check off who's going to be taking care of title. I think they may have updated that in dot loop. This is a one from 2 weeks ago. Yeah. So either way, you're going to check the box, or if you choose a different title company, you will check that box there. Prorations are pretty standard. If a client does not understand prorations, you should learn how to learn prorations. Best way to do this is practice net sheets. What are the big items that we're prorating typically? Taxes are the big one. We are also HOA dues. We are going to be prorating. We also have a water escrow hold in here. The reason why we have a water escrow hold is water is the only utility that transfers with parcel number. What number do the electric and gas follow? Social Security. So we don't care for our buyers what is going on their personal credit. We're hoping they're paying those off, but if they don't pay their water bill, guess who's paying for it? The buyer is going to be responsible. So you can write in $200, $300, $400. If you notice that there is a neglected property, do you think that that person is also neglecting their water bill? You should probably call Cleveland Water or whatever company it is and ask, what is this amount? And then just write it in there. So it's shocking, especially Cleveland Water is notorious. They won't turn off water. You can have a $5,000 back balance and they don't care. They'll just throw it on the tax bill and you'll be responsible. If you don't pay the tax bill, then they'll take the house. It's really unfortunate. If they would just shut water off, people would pay their water. Charges and escrow instructions. Pretty much a standard condition of acceptance. We will talk about buyer fees and seller fees. The seller may ask, how much am I paying and what are my closing costs? Does a seller always have closing costs? They do. And I'm saying this in a specific way for that reason. And it says the seller shall pay the following through escrow. So if a buyer or a seller asks, well, what else am I paying besides your commission? You just say line 92. A general term for closing costs are all the costs it takes to close. Typically, that's going to be 2 to 3% on top of our commission. Now, part of that is real estate transfer tax. So even a for sale by owner pays 2 to 3%. If they sell a house for $100,000 and they have no commissions whatsoever, they're going to net 97, something like that. They have to pay their prorated taxes. They have to pay title insurance. They have to pay their closing fees, things like that. Buyer will ask, well, what are my fees? Now, this is for title fees. This has nothing to do with the lender now. Line 98. All you have to do is sell them, look at line 98. Line 100 is your 199 fee. That is the only thing the buyer pays us because we get paid from who? Seller pays our commission. If you choose to, and I'd recommend this, if you are following your Magic 6 and watching this deal like a hawk, you should be paid more than $199 administrative fee. Go ahead and raise it up to $299, $399, $499, whatever you think your value is. Now, the office is going to end up with the majority of that $199, yet if you add another $100, that's $100 for you. You do 30 deals a year, you're now making an extra $3,000 a year, or you can hire someone to manage your transaction to close. I wouldn't recommend hiring someone even if you can afford it until you do 5 on your own. Limited home warranty. Pretty self-explanatory. Where do we get this number? 2 places. Number one, you check the MLS. If the seller is offering a home warranty, why in the world would you have your buyer pay for it? Now, we may not know on the MLS how much the home warranty is because the other agent signed it up and it just says yes. You can either ask them, but if you're in a rush, you can just put in there seller to pay and then TBD. I don't like doing that, but it's unfortunately usually the best case scenario we can write in. You can send a quick text, but in this market, you might have a listing agent get 40 calls a day on a house. They're not going to be very concerned about getting back to you about how much a home warranty is on the house. So write in their TBD, the seller to pay, and figure that out after. Make sure you write in who is paying for it. Is it the seller or the buyer? Pretty self-explanatory paragraph there. Closing disclosures. Who represents, let me rephrase this. The selling broker represents who?
Buyer.
The buyer. It's almost a trick question. I wish they would just write in their buyer broker. So these, what they're talking about here are the closing disclosures. This is where all the money is shown on one piece of paper. There is a separate page for a seller and a separate page for a buyer. Make sure that you are not authorizing the other agent to see your seller's or your client's information. Inspection. Yes, no, we usually have about 7 days for any of the normal inspections, 10 days for any other. And I want you all to write this sentence down. In other, any other inspections recommended by home inspector. A lot of people say deemed necessary. I've never heard a home inspector say, I deem it necessary for you to do this inspection. They may say, I recommend it. So any other inspections recommended by home inspector. I won't go into crazy detail because I want to get to these other items. Really important though, you have 3 days from your last inspection for what's called an ROC, which is a removal of contingency. If on day one, you have 7 days for a home inspection, day one, you do the inspection and that's the only inspection you do. When is the ROC due?
3 days.
4 days. That is not 3 days in addition to your 7 because you didn't have an inspection on day 7. So make sure you're responding quickly. Should you be waiting for 3 days? No, if your buyer knows, I bring ROCs with me to the home inspections and I tell the buyer, I know the home inspection report is coming tomorrow. Yet if the inspection goes well and we know that there's a window and a breaker that's bad in the house, we're just going to write that in and send it over. Let's expedite this because the longer the time is, the more likely that you're going to have an argument over earnest money. The faster you move, the more likely you'll come to a deal. By the way, that's the biggest moment of fear for the buyer. They are super excited when they make the offer. They are super scared during the home inspection, and prepare them for the home inspection. It's usually, I just had one yesterday, 65 pages.
Yeah.
And it, honestly, there's 1 day of repair work there. It's unbelievable. They're doing the repairs as we speak right now. But he's a very detailed home inspector. So prep your buyer though, that there's going to be 60 pages for us to go through. And usually the majority of the items are minor, yet there's usually 1 or 2 bigger items, or there can be. Also, what's another big one that's in almost every home, or it actually is in every home according to our property disclosures, mold. Every house has mold. Some is harmful, some is not. If you read the mold disclosure, it says that. Prep the buyers. A lot of homes do have mold and a lot of it is harmful. It does not mean the house that needs to be burned down. We can usually repair it. It's usually a couple $1,000s. Don't be afraid if we see that. If you see the humidifier also above 50, highly likely that there's mold in the attic. Keep your humidifiers down between 20 and 25. You can push it up even to 35 at some times during the year, but don't hit over 50. Lead-based paint, we don't have to talk about that. I think we've beaten that into our heads. Waiver, buyers sign this waiver and a lot of agents go, no, they don't. They're having inspections. If you read it, it says the buyer is waiving any inspection they did not check yes to. They are supposed to check that or sign there. Line 160 through 175, when a buyer asks you, do they get the earnest money back? This is what you reference. Pretty much A is they take the house as is. B, line 161, they're going to renegotiate the deal, either have the seller repair items or get compensated. What would I rather have a buyer have? Compensation, let them get the warranty with the companies that they're having the repairs done. Let them choose what color appliances they want. Let them choose the color of the walls. Otherwise, the seller, are they going to spend as much money or as little money as possible doing the repairs? As little as possible and as quick as possible, and it may not be the work that your buyer wants. Sometimes that's possible, sometimes it's not. Other quick item on an ROC, don't write in anything. If there is a compensation, don't write what it's being compensated for. Mold in the attic, as soon as that happens, who gets that contract? Lender gets it. Lender goes, we need to get that repair done before title transfer. It's an issue. So all we're going to do is write in the amount. Seller reduce purchase price by $5,000, making the new purchase price X amount. Line 179, do a little like line and say 179 or 181. You don't check both. This means that a buyer is either they've read the EPA pamphlet and the lead-based paint disclosure, or they have not. And then you would write in line 185, how many days they have to get that lead-based paint disclosure on. Megan's Law, I just have a quick conversation with the seller. Have you been notified by the sheriff about any sexual predators in the area? It's an awkward conversation, but I haven't had one yet on that, luckily. So, but yeah, it's something that we go over very quickly. Line 190, 194. It's again a 194 or 196, not both. Big mistake on 195. What does everybody like to write in that date? They love to write in today's date. That is the date the seller filled in the disclosure. If a house goes back to market after a disclosure has been written, there may be 2 or 3 disclosures floating around in somebody's computer or email. Make sure that you update disclosures, and if you do have that problem, you need to make sure that updated disclosure date is there, because otherwise they're looking at an old disclosure from a previous to a new problem. Let's see.
Would the current date?
195.
195.
You put the date that the disclosure, the update, whatever the disclosure you're referencing.
Okay.
196, again, you would just write in 3 or 5 days if they don't have a disclosure. We want disclosures to be written in, yet in a rush, and with an agent who doesn't have their disclosures uploaded, you might have that issue. I'm just going to say, for the sake of time, so we can get to these other forms, read through damage, read through electronic data security, read through binding agreements and addenda. Any addenda that's on here that you don't know, you should be looking at, reviewing, and understanding. Lastly, and I love this, line 253 through 256, please write your commission in. Without that, you don't get paid a commission.
Mhm.
So if you like to get paid, write that in. All right, let's move on to price escalation addendum.
Here,
Mhm.
on 255 for the, or I'm sorry, not 250, it's 256. I always just put per listing agreement because that, if I'm on the buying side.
If you're on the buying side, you have to put per listing agreement, because we don't know what a listing agent took it at. They could have took it at a 3% commission or a 20% commission. So that's between the seller, but we should be writing in to protect their commission as well, that per listing agreement. And then you do write in ABC Realty or whoever the other company is. All right, so price escalation addendum is the next form you were looking at. I'm sharing it on Zoom for those on Zoom. We have a buyer name, a seller name, and actually before we move on, where is the attendance sign-in sheet? Has anybody not signed in? If you haven't, make sure that that comes to you and you get signed in. All right, so we have a buyer name, seller name. Again, just check that for clarity that you have that done correctly. Address is pretty simple. City is pretty simple. Now, offer dated. What I am doing for the offer being dated on this is I'm writing when we have an accepted contract. Now, sometimes I'm writing this in, and often I'm writing this in when we don't have an accepted contract yet. I'm writing in whatever date I had my client sign the contract, or sign the offer, I should say. All right, so paragraph 1. If seller receives a bona fide written offer on the property from another prospective purchaser before acceptance of the buyer's offer, and such offer hereinafter referred to the competing offer is for a net purchase price, we'll go into that in a moment, higher than the buyer's offer to purchase, buyer hereby agrees to increase their buyer's offer such that the purchase price is blank higher. So this is what I would call the gap number. So I like to write in, a lot of people just say $1,000 higher. So what we're trying to do is we are, let's say my buyer, and we have 10 offers going in against my buyer. So there's 11 offers total on a house. I'm calling that listing agent saying, I'm giving you a price escalation form. And I write in there $1,000 better than the competing offer. So I'm offering 100,000 starting. Yet my buyer goes, I'll go up to 120,000, beating out the neighboring offer by $1,000. First mistake I made is I went to a round number. Everybody else goes to round numbers. I always beat them by 2. So I go by 1,000, then I add another 100. So I would say 121,100. I've beaten out tons of deals in the past, maybe 10 in my career. When I say tons, when it's come to these scenarios, and just added, and I beat them out by $100 or $1,100. So go to that 121,100. If your client wants to. The other thing that I do is, depending on my client's strength of their offer, I might be writing in there $2,000 or $3,000 or $4,000 higher. For instance, if I have an FHA, let's say I'm the listing agent on this deal now all of a sudden, and I have the 2 best offers. One is at 121 and the other one is at 120. Yet the 120 is a conventional 20% down and the 121 is 3.5% down. Which one am I going with? Conventional 20% down at 120. What you could do though is, if I had a $5,000 gap in there and my FHA buyers at 125, I'm probably going to have trouble with the appraisal, but let's say that I don't. I may go, maybe it's worth the risk of going with the FHA lower down payment. A great agent will be looking at that appraisal though number and going, what can we do there? The other thing that comes into play here with appraisals, and what we're going to see, is what we call the appraisal gap. The appraisal gap has nothing to do with that number I just gave you. That's when the house appraises, the difference between purchase price and appraisal price. That is really what sellers care about in today's market, because it doesn't matter what the offer is. I could offer $1 million on a $110,000 house. If I can't get a loan for $1 million, then I can only get what, if I'm a 3.5% down FHA buyer and it appraises at 110, that's all I can offer that client. So make sure you understand that the offer is only as good as the appraisal or the appraisal gap.
So this number is then the appraisal gap.
Correct. We do not have an appraisal gap form to the best of my knowledge.
Okay, so this is just a number like for the offer.
Yeah, so this is just going to set the purchase price. So on that example, let's say nobody else offers except, or the highest offer competing against me is 102,000, and I have a $3,000 number written in on that line. How much is my buyer buying it for? 105,000, exactly. Now, the next item is the limiting number. So our maximum purchase price. So we can go up to $120,000. So I will, if I have an offer though, let's say I have a $3,000 number up front and somebody else offers 119, what is my buyer's offer? 120, not 122, because it's a maximum number limited by that number. Now, one trick I will tell you, if you have a seller who's really looking for a maximum number, and this works very well, and it's a very scary thing for a buyer, go back and tell all the buyer agents, I'm sorry, we're not accepting escalation clauses. Who do escalation clauses protect? Only the buyer. If you really are looking for a high number and you have these 10, 15, I mean, I think the highest one I had was like 22 offers on one house. Best way is to just say, look, just bring me your best number. We're not doing escalation clauses because sometimes we have an escalation clause that kicks in another escalation clause that kicks in another escalation clause to the high number, and it gets very confusing and out of control. The buyer then though may feel, and they typically reduce their number oddly enough, because now they're going, well, I was going to pay 250 if there was somebody else willing to pay 248. Yeah, they'll go, if there's the next competing offer is 210, I don't want to be the guy paying 248. So they'll say, well, maybe I won't do 250 anymore. I'll do 230. So let your buyers or your sellers know. But when we do have these chaotic times, it's probably in your client's best interest to just say, let's cut out all the escalation clauses and go in correctly. If there's 1 or 2 or 3 deals, I don't mind doing them, and they can be a benefit. And you also have to look at your client's best interest. A lot of clients don't care about top dollar. They care about getting the deal closed. So be careful of going after those top numbers. Anyways, pretty much your buyer is going to be initialing that. I always put in NA on that second one. This is if the buyer wants to go above and beyond for their final purchase price. So let's say they offered 100,000, they're now buying it for 120. You could write in here $20,000 additional that they're going to come out of pocket for that bridge. That's because they may be assuming in this addendum that my client can only get a loan for 100,000 or something. I do write in though how many days for a pre-approval, yet I want that pre-approval typically already written unless it's an emergency scenario where it's 8 o'clock on a Sunday or something. I'm just writing in 5 days for a pre-approval to be written and given to the new buyer. NA not applicable. Because my buyer, I don't want them putting any more down payment to bridge that purchase price. What's that? Correct. Yeah, and even that amount, that $2,000 or $5,000 or 1,000, whatever I'm putting in, you could put $1 in there if you wanted. But again, that gap number, don't just automatically write in $1,000. I always like to write in a couple of thousand, depending on the strength of the offer. But if my buyer's like 40% down, yeah, I'll put in 1,000. But if they're 3.5% down and they have the inspections to the moon, then I might need a little more.
So if there was their escalation clause was like 40,000, we were on the buyer side, but the seller told me about it. So that's also not good because it just shies people away from taking it on.
That can be true, yeah.
The number's not gonna move if you tell me that I'm not gonna pay, even 10 over.
Yeah. I mean, if they're that confident they have 40,000 over purchase price, I don't know what price range that is. If it's $1 million home, that might not be that big of a deal. But if it's a $200,000 house, like 40,000 is ridiculous.
It was like in the area.
Yeah. So if it's a $200,000 house, like 40 grand's a lot. So be careful on the listing side. Well, again, we have to get permission from the seller, even to tell that there are multiple offers. Be careful. The first thing smart agents do is they reach out to the other agent, go, how many offers are on the house? A smart agent on the listing side will say, I have to get permission from my seller. And I do like to get permission from my seller to disclose that through an email. And I can have a banter with the agent, but I don't know that I would disclose 40,000 to discourage a buyer to write. But it can be a tricky way to go after. It's a tricky thing for a buyer to guess in today's market. It's really tough to see what these homes are going to sell for. What I do say is, at the end of the day, look at your monthly payment and the loan that you're getting. Let's not get crazy with this. But I want you to think 2 things. Number one, if I told you that the offer was accepted at the top dollar on this number, would you be celebrating or would you be a little bit scared? Well, that depends on what that number is for you, right? I mean, maybe you only put 5,000 over asking. But what we don't want is a number so high, for instance, 40 or 45,000, where you're like, shoot, what did I do? Right. I tell them, how do I calculate that number? I say, at what number would you say for $1 more? You would say, that's fine. I'm glad somebody else got it. That's the best way to handle multiple offer situations. And I literally go through, I'm like 130, 135, 140. And they're like, and then I calculate the monthly payment at 140 and they go, yeah, that's probably too much. So I go, great, let's do 139. They go, no, let's do 135. Perfect. We've calculated it correctly. I'm not trying to get them the house. I want to get them the house that they want at a value that they can afford.
As a buyer's agent, can we ask listing agent to give us some proof which we can give to our buyers that yes, this property had, the offer for this much, and if we are putting an escalation clause, just to have a proof that yes, they had a real offer of this amount.
Yeah, so in this, it actually says each party is hereby advised that all questions of law, including these pertaining to the subject matter of the addendum, should be directed their independent attorney, but they do have the right in here. Where is it? Yeah, seller shall provide buyer with a complete and accurate copy of the competing offer upon acceptance. Is that your question?
Yeah, so by that you mean the complete contract or?
Yeah, so they need to send, let's say I'm competing against you, Savvy,
Yeah,
and you're the next best offer. You offered 120 and my client said they'll go up to 121.
mhm.
I would tell that other agent, I need to see that offer.
But say if you win, your buyer wants to see that, that, okay?
Of course,
Yeah,
Yeah.
so the listing agent has to provide some.
according to
document.
this document. The other two things that are kind of tricky with this, you are also giving out your high number.
Mhm.
That seller can just say, I don't care what that escalation clause says, I'll sell it to you for 120. We have no other offers on the table, or maybe we have one, but I'm not telling you where it's at. My
Mhm.
counter offer to you is I'll sell it to you for 120.
Okay.
They have the right to do that. So your client has to be aware of that. Has anybody experienced that though? You have had that?
So the buyer didn't end well.
I bet it didn't.
Not getting-
Yeah.
And I truly believe we were the only offer when they called and said you're in multiple, but how do you prove that?
You can't.
So the listing agent
I mean,
is
to
not.
me, the point of the escalation clause, in my mind, was for the seller to prove
Mhm.
that we were in multiples. Instead of just, but from this, when I'm a listing agent, I'm like, well, if they were willing to pay this. Because they got caught up in the competition, why aren't they willing to
Yeah.
pay it, whether they have competition or not? So it's a double-edged sword depending upon who you represent.
Yeah, it's twofold, right? It's not just the seller, it's also the agent. Like, how much do you trust that agent and how much do you want to work with them?
Yeah.
Because they can get their daggers out. My sellers traditionally on these items, I will either tell them, look, my seller's not looking at escalation clauses, we're getting a ton of offers.
Mhm.
So they're walking into it knowing, don't submit our highest number. Or my sellers are going, look, Eric, I never thought I was going to get above 200 and you're getting me 240. Like, we're not going to get greedy on this and try and get 260. They're saying, let's use escalation clauses. If somebody offers 230, we'll acknowledge that and sell it for 232.
I will rephrase it, like suppose, somebody put the offer for 118. My client put the offer, with a maximum amount of 120.
Mhm.
So if my client can they ask, the listing agent, or I can ask the listing agent to give me a proof that you got the offer for 180, so that my client can, give me an offer for 120.
If the seller has signed this, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, but they don't have to. Like, if you submit that form, you're throwing your penny into the wishing well and hoping that the other agent plays ball with you. And often they do. I would say the majority of the time. Allison's the first one I've heard have that example. It doesn't surprise me, but you
Yeah,
have to be aware. So, yeah, and the other concern your buyers have is, well, their best friend went ahead and wrote an offer for 118.
Yeah, that's
Right.
Yeah.
That's also a real world possibility. I
Absolutely.
have not experienced that, or at least I have been blind to it if it did happen. I think it would be pretty silly on the deals I've done, because I don't think I've ever had one that was maxed out. I've had them very close or similar, but you would think if they were doing that, they would max it out with a competing offer. And your client should also look at, well, maybe they don't want that highest offer because it doesn't have 10 grand in earnest money, where buyer number 2, that was a little bit lower, had 10 grand in earnest money and they're more solid.
But as a document, do they need to provide the complete contract?
Yep. That's what it reads right in there. Yep. Yeah. Yeah. Technically, according to this, you should not even, they shouldn't even be crossing out names or anything, but like, that's also a whole nother challenge, because now you're giving out confidential information.
Because lately I saw somebody, the listing agent sent the document, and it was a single page document signed by the listing agent that, my client has got this offer,
Mhm.
but nothing was, the names were crossed off.
Yeah.
Nothing about the contract, nothing was changed.
Yeah. Yeah. I would be crossing off if I was on the listing agent side.
Mhm.
But yeah, if you smell something funny there, be aware of it and caution your clients.
Well, just one page document, it was not
Yeah.
the whole contract. nothing.
Yeah, usually they do just send the first page. I don't have a problem with that.
Okay.
But again, it does say net. So if there is a seller concession in there, that gets backed out. So a 120 offer from another agent that has $5,000 in closing costs, again, it probably wouldn't appraise. But if I'm beating it out by $3,000, then I would be at a 118 number, not a 123. So. All right,
This
yeah.
would be a silly question, but just because we submit this or as a list agent, just because we receive these and say 3 people put it in, mine's the best one as far as the escalation clause goes, doesn't mean we're gonna get picked. just
Correct.
Because if we look at all the other terms, they might be more favorable than
Mhm.
another one, right?
Yeah, that's where high earnest money and a dedicated buyer and a quick home inspection date, like just reduce your home inspections to 3 days, call your home inspector and see if you can get there tomorrow. Like that's a great way that you can make it happen. Also, try and stay away from these deals. Like if a seller is telling you they're going to wait till Monday to accept an offer, I'm calling that agent and going, what can I do to get this house under contract today? What is such a good deal that your client would take it today? The amount of deals I put together that way are incredible. Don't wait, take immediate action, because that seller, even though they are waiting till Monday, does not need to, they don't have a contract signed with you. Just because they put that in the MLS doesn't mean they have to abide by that. If somebody offers them $100,000 over asking, they're allowed to take it. If $100,000 under asking, they can take whatever they want. Lastly, we've got 5 minutes left. So seller occupancy post title transfer. Buyer name, seller name, address, property dated, same thing as the last one. This can help your clients. For instance, I just did this. We had a house that was listed for $250 very early on in the market. I jumped on it and we got under contract for $220. Like that never happens, I feel like. We got $30,000 off asking, and 2 reasons. Number 1, we were very quick. Actually, 3 reasons. Number 2, we were full cash. And number 3 is we did this. Without this, the seller would not have done it. We closed in 2 weeks. The sellers were moving to Italy. Do you think that somebody, when they move to Italy, they want to make sure that their house is completely closed and done? This is the assurance to the seller that they can't come back on the last minute of the last day and go, sorry, the deal fell apart. My buyer lost their job and can't get a loan. So what we did is we closed the deal. We title transfer in 2 weeks, and then we gave possession 6 weeks after. So the seller had 6 additional weeks to live in the home. Now, a lot of red flags go up. A lot of sellers or buyers go, well, wait a second. Why in the world would I do that? Because now I'm paying my mortgage, taxes, insurance, all of that. Well, for a $30,000 discount, I'll pay the taxes for 6 weeks. Not a big deal. So negotiate that accordingly. But again, that makes your offer a lot more enticing to some individuals. So what we want to do is write in the address, the offer date. We already said that. Item number 1 is seller shall retain possession of the property after title transfer, with the seller delivering possession and occupancy on the of the property to the buyer 6 p.m. on such and such date. So this is the date that your client gets to move in. So in this case, we were moving in May 1st. My client gets to move in. So we have about 2 months until that date. But again, we're filing the deed in 2 weeks. The title transfer date is where? It's in the contract. It has nothing to do with this. What I would write on the contract for possession is see seller post-close transfer, or you could just say see addendum instead of a date.
But the buyer can also ask for rent from the seller.
Yep, and that's our line 2. So between the date of title transfer and the date that the seller actually and completely vacates the property, seller shall pay the buyer the rent in the amount of blank per day. How do we come up with that rent amount typically? Buyer's mortgage divided by 30. Is it always going to be 100% accurate? No, that's fine. You can write in there a higher amount. In this case, we actually were going to, the seller was going to pay just one lump sum, $2,000. What we decided to do is just reduce the price by $2,000 and have $0 in rent. Couple of red flags. If you have people who are wishy-washy sellers, they are not taking care of their property, they're not signing documents fast. Do you want to do this with that seller? Run away. If the clients that we went into, there was not a spot of dust in their basement, We know they're taking care of it. They're not going to beat the house up and it's going to be in fine condition. Your buyer may say, how could I trust these people that are living in my house that I own? What if they damage it? You really have to use your judgment. Like, these people have lived there for 30 years and the house is in good condition. I think they can make it another 6 weeks. Yet it's a real scenario. Notice what it says on the bottom of line 1. Buyer may commence eviction proceedings. If the seller does not move out, does your buyer just like to go over there and like knock the door in and take their stuff out to the curb?
No,
No, they have to have an eviction proceeding. Those take 30 to 60 days, and it's going to cost your buyer $500 to $600. It may sound chaotic. Trust me, it's not the end of the world. It's pretty simple. Has anyone had to have an eviction while doing one of these? I've
It's also important too, if your seller is buying another house, to make sure they're good on
Yes,
it.
yes. Great point. When we have these home sale contingencies, when we have these move out dates, pay attention. Even if you're filing on a May 1st date, does not mean that you can file or have possession the day before in the previous home, because like you might only have 24 hours to move because until the next person comes into the next home. So make sure you're like walking through house A, B, C, D, E, F. I think the biggest we did, we had a chain of 5 homes, not all personally within our brokerage either. But if this house transferred, then this one, we have to be aware of those closing dates and remember and expect. I always tell those sellers and buyers, like, chances are this is going to be stressful and there's going to be a problem in there at one point. In that transaction, we had a seller who got a gift from their mother from the lender. The lender said, give a gift of $5,000 so that you can close on the loan. She got a gift of $5,000 and she goes, oh, I thought that was a housewarming gift. I bought furniture with it. No, that was for your loan. Like, how in the world did you mix that up? Nothing to do with our clients or even our agents in our brokerage. It was a deal three deals down. But now all of a sudden we had to reinitialize all this other stuff and it moved closing dates for everybody a week behind. Try and move 5 moving trucks. So yeah, your dollars per day are pretty simple. It also talks about here utilities. Utilities are going to stay in the seller's names typically, and they're going to pay for them. When should your walkthrough be done though? Prior to title transfer. You can hold up title transfer while the sellers, that's the only thing sellers care about. Once they get their money and their check, see you later. You have very little recourse besides suing, and nobody's suing over $1,000 drywall damage. What you can do though is do the walkthrough, even though the seller's not out of the house and they're still living in it, and it looks the same. Do the walkthrough then. That's your only point of recourse. From the date of the title transfer until possession date, seller shall retain responsibility for any damage, injury, death, all of that. Seller should have rental insurance. Make sure if you're on the buyer side or seller side, you are sending an email to your client or the other agent and saying, did your client initialize renter's insurance? Because their current policy ran out. They don't have insurance on the home. Who does? The buyer now has insurance on it.
But it's homeowners insurance.
It's homeowners insurance. So if damage happens, a flood backup, a fire, something catastrophic, what is not insured? The house would be from the buyer, but the personal items is right. The couches, the TVs, all of that, unless your client gets that, that's not insured. The other thing where Allison's point could be is if your buyer pays cash, what do a lot of cash investors forget to do? Call in insurance. That home is uninsured. Real easy to do. Why do buyers with loans not forget insurance?
Lender makes you do it.
Lender forces you. Another quick magic 6 note. Make sure that there is insurance and send an email to your client. Last 2 paragraphs I already talked about. We already talked about utilities. Who's responsible from the date after title transfer? Buyer shall be solely responsible for the condition, maintenance of repairs for the property. So that means the hot water tank blows the day after. Your buyer has to know that's a risk that they're taking. They're going to be fixing a hot water tank for themselves in a couple of weeks, but right now it's for the seller. They are a landlord. And lawn maintenance, the seller is going to take care of lawn maintenance, snow removal, things like that. The parties hereby acknowledge that the buyer does not own more than 3 rental units. Not sure why that makes a difference, but something to be aware of. If your buyer does have more than 3 rental units, I would change that. The entire agreement between the parties shall, pretty much it's a legal binding contract is the end of that. So that's a great addendum to use to make your offer worth more without just spending more of your client's money. It gets confusing. Stay away from these if possible. Yet in the certain scenarios, make sure your buyer knows the risks that are involved. They might have repairs for somebody else and they might have might have to do an eviction. Very, very rare. But again, use your own judgment if the seller seems like they're a responsible individual. So that's everything. Thanks for coming, everyone. I hope this was helpful. And we will see you all soon.
The lead time for this addendum would be